Welcome to episode number 139 of the Beyond Social Media Show, the podcast for marketing, advertising, public relations, and communications professionals. We're recording live on YouTube on April 17, 2016. I am David Erickson. I'm here with my co-host, B.L. Achman. Some of the topics we're going to cover today are UC Davis's SEO crisis, Google Play podcasts, Facebook branding and content tools, IP mapping and its discontents, Google Cardboard apps, the Do Your Job campaign, and corporate holograms. But we always kick it off with the worst story of the week. And BL always has the honors to kick it off. BL, what was the worst story?
Well, I think UC Davis's ham-handed attempt to get rid of the November 2011 pepper spraying of students and also to improve not only their reputation, but the reputation of the chancellor, Linda Katehi. And so the Sacramento Bee went after them in a big way using the California Public Records Act, and they found out that in January 2013, UC Davis signed on with a Baltimore, Maryland PR firm called Nevins & Associates for a 6-month contract that paid $15,000 a month, and the university paid the Nevins firm $92,970.73 through July 2013, including travel and lodging costs for a Nevins associate named Molly White. They obtained the proposal, obviously someone leaked the proposal to them, that Nevins & Associates used to get the job, and they said that they were, quote, prepared to create and execute an online branding campaign designed to clean up the negative attention the University of California, Davis and Chancellor Katehi have received related to the events that transpired in November 2011. And the paper published the contract as well, and they outlined their objectives to include eradication of references to the pepper spray incident in search results for Google University and the Chancellor. They said that this public university that's funded with taxpayer funds could actually be expected to wipe this content off the internet. But as we all know, basically what that proves is how out of touch the leadership of UC Davis is, because what goes online stays online. It doesn't really matter what you do. And meanwhile, Chancellor Katehi is under fire. Students have been protesting outside her office since March 11th. They say they're going to stay in their sit-in until she resigns, which is highly unlikely. So, I mean, this paper really went after them in a big way. And I agree with what they did, because this is wrong.
So I don't know that I don't know I totally agree with you that it's wrong. Let me play devil's advocate for a minute. First of all, I mean, the coverage of the leaked documents, the leaked contract, and the coverage of their attempt to manage their online reputation and search is going to increase the visibility of this particular story they're trying to deal with, because people are going to read about it in the news. They're going to start searching for it, and they're going to find it, and Google's going to recognize that change in behavior that people are using in search results and promote that content because people want to see it. So it's having the leak of the story basically is having the opposite effect of what they're trying to achieve. But on the other hand, so I haven't followed the story from start to finish. I saw the headlines when it first came out, and then I didn't pay any more attention to it, so I don't know all the details of what's going on with this. But what's an organization to do? My reaction is, okay, so these cops or these security guards made poor decisions, did things that they shouldn't have in pepper spraying the students. It got a lot of attention. So is the university supposed to be have to deal with consequences of that in perpetuity? Do they have a right to try and clean up their image or not? I think they do.
Well, the basic way that you clean up your image is to go forth with better material and do that on an ongoing basis. And they certainly have the opportunity to do that. And yes, that's something that is not going to go away. And I mean, so many people have, and the thing is, it trended on Twitter. UC Davis trended on Twitter. And so, you know, once that happens, you know that the thing is going viral, at least for some period of time. So yeah, they have a right to try and clean up their reputation, but probably not in the way that they did it.
I don't know. I don't think it's nefarious. I think it's an attempt to deal with a public relations issue. And if they, I assume they've come out with a condemnatory statement for the actions that instigated this story in the first place. They should be promoting that as
Very
part of their
mild.
search
What they
results.
said was very mild. That's the big issue. They didn't really come out and condemn it. That's the big issue. And,
Okay.
that's one of the reasons it's not going away. But we have so much to cover. We have to
We do.
move
So
forward.
here's an interesting story that I came across. It's a bit technical, but it's fascinating. So this is having to deal with internet protocols, which are those numbers behind the website addresses like BeyondSocialMediaShow.com. In order to transfer information from a website address, there's an organization that manages those numbers, and they're called IP protocols, and they are mapped to a website address like BeyondSocialMediaShow.com. So this is a story from Fusion. The reporter's name is Kashmir Hill, and it has to do with a farm in Wichita, Kansas, a little town called Potwin, and there's a 360-acre piece of land owned by Joyce Taylor, and they've got a very big problem. The acreage is quiet, it's remote, it's a farm, it's a farm, there's pasture, there's an old orchard, two barns, some hog shacks, and a two-story house on the piece of land. The nearest neighbor is a mile away. The closest big town is 1,300 people. It's a 2-hour drive from the exact geographic center of the United States. So the people who live on the Taylor farm have found themselves in this technological horror story because for the last decade, the people who live there have been accused of being identity thieves, being spammers, scammers, and fraudsters. They've been visited by FBI agents, federal marshals, and IRS collectors. Ambulances have shown up at their residence searching for suicidal veterans. Police officers have been searching for runaway children there. They found people scrounging around in their barn. Their renters have been doxxed. Their names and addresses have been posted on the internet by vigilantes, and they are none of these things. And the reason for it is IP mapping. So as I said, IP stands for Internet Protocol. It's the numbers behind the website addresses. And if you're savvy enough, you can find out whether a certain IP address has been associated with a malicious device or where it's located in the world. There are companies that provide IP intelligence, and they map these IP addresses to physical locations. And that's what happened to the Taylor farm. So the computer in the Taylor farm house was mapped to this particular location, but IP mapping is not an exact science. The company that mapped their address, the Taylor farm's address, could only identify it as within the United States. So it didn't have an exact address. It just knew it was in the United States. And so their policy for those types of addresses was to map it to the exact center of the United States, which happens to be the Taylor farm. So there's hundreds of IP addresses that are mapped to the Taylor's farms. Who knows what people are using those addresses for? And internet sleuths are finding all this nefarious stuff mapped to those IP addresses, which happen to be located at the Taylor's farm. So the company that is doing this mapping realized what's going on. They were told what was going on, and they're working on relocating those addresses to bodies of water rather than physical locations on land, so people aren't affected by this. But just a fascinating technological
of Nettie, but I mean, don't you see this as a Netflix series next year?
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
This is like ideal for the poor Taylor farmers, that feeding the pigs and the FBI comes. That's crazy. That really is crazy. Well, definitely not as crazy as this, but indicative of the times we live in. Southwest Airlines was trending on Twitter today because a Muslim student, was kicked off a plane for speaking Arabic, and that did not happen today. That happened a month ago, and I don't know exactly why it went viral today and why the New York Times and all the other major media picked it up. But what happened was a UC Berkeley college student, an Iraqi refugee, whose family fled Iraq in 2002 after his diplomat father was killed under Saddam Hussein's regime. He was booted off his Southwest Airlines flight and questioned by the FBI because another passenger heard him speaking Arabic during a phone call. And I will butcher his name, I'm sure. He's a senior at UC Berkeley, and his name is Karyuldin Mazrumi. And he was saying goodbye to his uncle on the phone, and he used the phrase inshallah, which translates to if God is willing. And this woman who has not been identified reportedly thought he'd use the word shaheed, meaning martyr, which is associated with jihad. So he was flying home after attending a dinner at the Los Angeles World Affairs Council with the Secretary General of the United Nations, and he stopped to make a call to his uncle. You have to wonder, this woman who reported him must have had some knowledge of Arabic, or thought she did. And so Zahir Bilou, the executive director of the San Francisco Bay office of the Council of American Islamic Relations, said there have been at least 6 cases of Muslims being pulled off flights so far this year. And Southwest Airlines conduct has been of particular concern. And earlier this week, a Muslim woman passenger was removed from a flight to Chicago. So on Facebook, an Arabic-speaking friend of mine said, this is happening so often nowadays, I'm afraid to really go on an airplane and make the mistake of speaking Arabic on the phone with my family, or with my family. And she said the word inshallah, God's willing, is commonly said on a regular basis among all Arabs from all religions, even atheists use it. So, you know, this Islamophobia is spreading and is frightening, and I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon either. And I'm not quite sure why Southwest Airlines would be a bigger offender than others, but apparently they have been.
Wow, well, little knowledge is a dangerous thing, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, the weird part of the story is like, what, unless you spoke Arabic or thought you did,
You'd have to know a little bit of Arabic to, you know.
So who was she, and like why was she? You know, that's just sort of a weird kink there. So I have a WTF one. A Facebook post went viral. A man was hit in the head with a brick that he threw at the window of a suicide prevention charity's office. This happened in England. The UK Independent reported it, and he's in Belfast, actually. And he was at the Public Initiative for Prevention of Suicide and Self-Harm, ironically enough. And he, for some reason, threw a brick at the window, and then it popped back and hit him in the head. And so on Facebook, PIPS, which is how the organization goes by their initials, and said, we need some help. Would anybody be available this evening to replace glass and secure our Antrim Road office? And then the next day they thanked everybody who showed up to do it. And, you know, the guy's in the hospital, hit himself in the head. You know, you can't make that stuff up.
It reminds me of, we talked many episodes ago about the burglars of the taco restaurant who threw a brick to try and smash out the window of the taco restaurant, but it bounced off.
And they stopped for a taco, right?
They stopped for, well, they didn't stop for a taco. They stopped to rob the place. But the owner of the restaurant took the security footage and made a video of it. And one of the comments on the video was, "Learn how to throw, dude."
Right, the video went viral. I remember that. That was a while ago. Yeah, there's all sorts of instances of burglars getting caught in the chimney, and you know, I mean, you really have to think about this stuff, I suppose. So I believe that brings us to better news. Yes.
It does indeed. And I think we have some great news. We'll find out tomorrow. Google Play is supposed to be opening up for podcasts. Podcasts are supposed to be going live on Google Play on Monday. This is from Android Police. The reporter is Bertel King Jr. And Android Police has obtained a copy of an email from National Public Radio. It's sent to its member stations, letting them know that NPR podcasts would be available on Google Play on Monday, April 18th. That's tomorrow. The information in the email was supposed to be embargoed, but obviously someone leaked it to Android Police. So my question is, was this leak intended to let NPR listeners know how to find their podcasts, given the ban that NPR has on mentioning their podcasts on air that we talked about?
Funny, that was last week, yeah.
clever leak to let people know where they can find their
Now we'll let people know where they can find us on Google Play.
Yeah, well, we've applied. We've been accepted to Google Play Store. So if you're an Android user, search for the Beyond Social Media show there. We'll also include a link when it becomes available on on our page in the show notes. So we're crossing our fingers, but it sure looks like Google Play is going to open up for podcasts tomorrow, and that's huge because that's a big audience.
What a big player in the podcast thing is just exploding. I mean, you just have to wonder, like, who's not podcasting anymore, and how this is all going to play out, and whether big players are going to make it better or ruin it, which I suspect they might. But I came across the 10 best Google Cardboard apps and games you need to try, and that was in International Business Times in a story by Owen Hughes. Google Cardboard is definitely the cheapest and the most accessible way to try virtual reality, and there's all kinds of easy ways to of expensive ways to try virtual reality, but this one doesn't cost you a small fortune, and it's not the same level of fidelity as Oculus Rift, but maybe still lots of fun you can have. And so they picked out several. The Cardboard Camera, which is a Google branded VR app, lets you take panoramic photos and then view them through your VR player. It's free. The photos are in 3D and you get a sense of depth, and you can capture sound, so it makes the experience immersive. I haven't tried this one, Art 360. It's a VR video application that lets you explore far-flung locations from your sofa. You can look at Mont Blanc and the Palace of Fontainebleau and shark-infested waters, and you can have a travelogue right from your couch, and also free. Goosebumps Night of Scares will definitely give you nightmares. I that's not my favorite, but it's a tie-in with the upcoming film starring Jack Black and a series, R.L. Stein's series, and he lends his voice to the app, and you go through this ghoul-ridden house and you try to escape, but it gets really creepy. I don't like that kind of thing.
Very cool. I'll have to try that out. I do like that kind of thing. Getting back to the podcasting story. This is not podcasting, but it's kind of podcasting. Audible launched what they're calling channels this past week. This is from the Hot Pod newsletter, which was republished on Neiman Lab website by Nicholas Qua. And so Nicholas Qua reports that Audible has launched channels. It's a portal through which the company now delivers what it's calling short-form listening experiences. So not podcasts, short-form listening experiences. Right now, the content is somewhat limited in the channels. There's narrated readings of newspaper articles from papers like the New York Times and the Washington Post. There's some stand-up comedy routine recordings. There's established podcast brands like American Public Radio's Marketplace and Risk. Audible has effectively changed its definition, so it's no longer an an audio book company, but an audio content company. Qua is arguing that makes sense, given that we're now afforded the opportunity to have short-form listening experiences. The content there's currently nothing commissioned by Audible or developed by Audible. But last May, Audible hired Eric Newzoom, I think is how you pronounce it, from NPR, where he was VP of programming, and he is now a senior VP of original content at Audible. Qua quoted in a Q&A with him, I'm not at Audible to build podcasts. I'm at Audible to start a revolution in the way that audio is produced and in the way that audio is distributed. It's an intoxicating thing to say, people, that we have the appetite and aspiration to do things that other people can't do. One of the things I always tell producers pitching me is that if you can imagine something being a podcast, it's probably not a big enough idea for us. I think our risk tolerance is very high. So Audible has very high ambitions for audio in a short form format. but it is, you know, that's what podcasts are.
The
So we'll see how
podcasts,
that
yeah.
develops.
But they also have lots of money, so let's
They
hope
do.
that they put it in a direction. You know, this a little bit reminds me of the endless meetings that you've probably also sat through, where people wanted to change the name of social media to something else. You know, they want to change the name of podcasting to something else. There will be more conversations like that, like let's not call it that because we're going to change it and make it better or make it different, or that doesn't really describe the way we do it. And, you know, that's kind of a silly conversation. Just make great podcasts. So there's a campaign called Do Your Job that's targeting the Senate, and it's a 1.5-minute video from a company called Jash, and it was launched on the startup site VidMe on Thursday, and it has actors playing different professions talking about how much easier it is to just be lazy and not care about your responsibilities. And they talk about how their lack of compassion relates to members of the Senate not voting on President Obama's Supreme Court nominee, Merrick Garland. And one of them says, why does Merrick Garland even want to be a Supreme Court justice? Yeah, he could easily be something simpler like a senator. And the message at the end is senators are, you know, are standing by because they sure aren't working, so call them now and tell them to do your job. And the fun part about it is the channel's backed by Sarah Silverman and Michael Cera and some other comedians, and they're going to do a series of these. And, you know, really, it is time for senators to do their job in more ways than just the Supreme Court nomination.
It's very funny and I think very effective to use create political messages in this way rather than the you know, the grainy photographs and the dramatic voiceover that you always hear from political commercials. This is hilarious. The cop in the commercial is like, working is dumb.
And behind him, a guy is breaking into a car. And he's like, oh, whatever. You know, it's great. I think they really did a great job. And they have a whole channel full of things that are equally fun to watch. I was in there for quite a long time once I started looking.
Speaking of political humor, you probably know by now of Hillary Clinton's challenges getting her Metro card swiped in the New York subway. So this is a Business Insider story by Pamela Engel, and so you've seen that, her struggles, and she's swiping it several times, can't get it to work to get through the turnstile. Lots of news coverage of her trying to get in through the subway turnstile. Saturday Night Live mocked her on a segment of that. Well, the Clinton campaign has turned that into lemonade. They've made lemonade out of that by including an animated GIF of the incident on Hillary Clinton's website's 404 error page. So if you go to hillaryclinton.com/404, you'll see the animated GIF there. Beneath it, there's a message that says, "Trying to get where you want to go? This page isn't it. But while you're here, how about signing up to be a volunteer," with a link to their volunteer sign-up page. So very clever use of
very clever,
an
but
instant.
I will tell you, I'm a New Yorker, and the problem with the cards in the subway is that they don't clean the things you swipe it into, and there's millions of people going in there every day, and I often have that same problem, and so does everybody else. So making fun of her for that, you know, it wasn't really fair. It's really the subway. And then what happens is your damn card doesn't work. Now mine is filled automatically, so there's always money on it, and most people do that now. And you have to go up to the window, you have to wait in line, the person has to check your card and say, oh yeah, that's all right, go swipe again, and then maybe the next time you do it, it'll work. So it wasn't totally her fault, but it sure was funny. So there's something really cool that I'm a big fan of Accenture's CEO Pierre Nanterme. He's done some very innovative things, like recently getting rid of performance reviews because he says they don't really reflect what people are doing in their jobs. It's you know, like taking tests for kids. It's too much pressure. But the source here is Twitter and the Washington Post. The reporter is Roxanne Taylor, who's Accenture's CMO, and also Ellen Shook, who is the head of global HR. And what they did was the CEO, Pierre Nanterme, beamed into a corporate meeting in Chicago via hologram from a studio in Paris, and he talked to 500 of the company's top executives, and simultaneously Ellen Shook was beamed in from New York, and they had these two three-dimensional holograms of the two of them chatting with each other about things like the performance reviews, which they got rid of, and recent acquisitions. And then they answered questions from the audience. And, you know, the company has 373,000 plus employees. And he says, there's no way I could visit them all. I wouldn't have the time. And in-person meetings are important, but there's other times when I don't need to move my body. I need to move my ideas. So apparently, Accenture's built 7 studios with the capacity to capture holograms around the globe. And not the first time these been used in the business world, but pretty much Cisco's CEO, John Chambers, talked with holograms with 2 executives in India a couple of years ago, and they're all over the music business. But I think that Adam Preset, who's a research director at Gartner, was right when he said Accenture's on the bleeding edge here for enterprise. You know, you still see companies struggling to do company-wide town halls with videos. So next, he plans to push his team to have 3D images in several locations at one time. And the more advanced they can make the technology, the more that he hopes it'll help executives to become productive. And, you know, they have employees in 120 countries, and there's 6,000 managing directors. And he also banned large meetings, so adopting these large-scale webcasts with telepresence video conferencing, very interesting idea, I think. And, you know, I think it is quite cutting edge to be doing it in the way that they're doing it.
It's definitely got cool factor. I mean, you know, holograms are cool, but I'd like, what are you accomplishing other than having a wow factor? I don't know how. I mean, doesn't video conferencing do basically the same thing you want to do?
Of course it does.
Want to accomplish?
It doesn't have a wow factor, and it doesn't.
There we go. Okay, so we're in agreement that
their seat, and it's not
that's
fun.
the distinction.
You know, he's saying that you should be able to have fun. I mean, he's a really interesting guy. I'd love to meet him. He says that, you know, work should be fun, and work should be creative, and people shouldn't be judged in little boxes. And so he's just trying to get out of little boxes. I like that idea.
So this is not as wow factor, but it's interesting nonetheless. Facebook has rolled out a new branded content tool. So this is from Facebook itself. Facebook's updated its branded content guidelines. Their page terms and ad policy now allow certain types of branded content on Facebook and require publishers and influencers to tag the marketer in the post to make clear that the post is branded content. So branded content posts will now have an attribution line at the top of it where it says the influencer's name with the brand. So for example, Lady Gaga with Intel would identify a branded post that was by Lady Gaga, and it was sponsored by Intel.
Paid for it.
Getting paid for it, yeah. So this branded content tool will enable publishers and influencers to tag a marketer. As I said, with branded content posts, the marketer will be identified when the post is published. So if it's coming from the influencer, then the marketer will know when it's post. They'll also get high-level post insights, so they'll get engagement and reach metrics, total spend and CPM of the tag post. Marketers will have the option of sharing and boosting the post themselves to drive additional value. The Facebook argues that this tool will introduce more transparency, allow them to better understand how their marketers, how their marketing initiatives are performing. Of course, they didn't get those analytics before because they're reliant on the influencer to tell them what it was. And, you know, some people are honest and some people are not, so you never know. But marketers can now leverage the branded content creative for the ads as well. So they include that influencer content in their own ads and actively engage sponsorships. I think this is a fascinating development simply because, one, the metrics involved are available to marketers now, and they don't have to rely on somebody's word. But also, more significantly, I think Facebook is building the infrastructure to connect influencers with marketers directly, effectively turning themselves into a talent agency. Because there are organizations out there that connect influencers and marketers, but Facebook has this critical mass. They've got the reporting infrastructure already in place. Everybody's on Facebook, so they're kind of taking over that business, I think.
Well, it's also more of Facebook being a pay-per-play. You know, the statistics show that people are sharing less personal information on Facebook, and so more of it's going to be paid content, and that makes me wonder why people are going to want to be there if so much of it is going to be paid content. I'm not sure that I love that idea. But I love the next one because it's about freaking time that they did what you're going to tell us about now.
Yeah, well, they've introduced live video. Their Facebook live videos are being included in trending content now. So the trending topics will include live video streams. Not surprisingly, given how much they've emphasized video and what a big push they're doing for their Facebook live video in particular. Well, the video streams obviously that appear are going to be the ones that have broad appeal, and there's a lot of people talking about them or watching them. But then also, given how Facebook tailors trending topics to your individual interests and behavior and location, it's likely that video streams will also have more niche content too. So I can see this being something, Facebook Live being a utility that you could use for conferences when a lot of people are at conferences, and seeing it show up in trending content for people who are in that profession or paying attention to that conference or whatever.
Speaking of conferences, reminds me of one I want to mention. If you're in New York or want to come here, on May 6th, there's a TEDxEast conference with more than 20 speakers, and it's an invitation-only conference. I can put a link into the show notes of where you apply. You have to tell them a little bit about yourself and what your talents are and so on, and then get invited to come. But I know there are still some tickets left, and having been to several of these, you really want to come if you have the chance. So we'll put a link in there. I was playing all week with GIPHY is that how you say that? Or is it GIPHY?
GIF, not GIF. It's GIF. It's not GIF, it's GIF.
Okay. GIPHY Capture for Mac was launched this week, and it lets you capture and annotate anything on your desktop, and also, use their whole library of searchable content. And I just had the most fun with it. And I found Ricky Ricardo was in there making faces, and there's all sorts of wonderful things. And give it a look if you're on a Mac. It's great fun.
Definitely, I'll definitely try that out. I had just got done with a project, a card sorting project, and used a tool called Optimal Workshop to do it. Now, if you're not familiar with card sorting, I'll have to explain it. Card sorting is a method or a technique to understand and develop information infrastructure for a website. So people who are developing a new website or redesigning an existing website will often use a card sorting session to figure out how people understand the content within a website. What you do is you gather your typical representative members of your typical audience for your website, and basically give them cards, like 3x5 cards, that have the labels of the categories of content or the pieces of content you have on your website, and ask them to sort them into different categories that make sense to them, and then apply labels to those categories, and that can get you started on how to build a menu for your website, for example. So I did this card sorting exercise for a client, and we used Optimal Workshop to do it. Optimal Workshop is a tool. It's a for-fee service, and it collects the results. People do this card sorting exercise online. It collects the results, it crunches the numbers, and then it gives you visualizations of the results, so you can get your insight from there. It has dendrograms, are one of the visualizations. Dendrograms are basically a tree-like structure that show you taxonomic relationships. So it'll show you where the most number of people put the cards, and it'll give you a similarity matrix, which shows you the strength of card pairing. So if 95% of the people paired these two pieces of cards together, it'll show you that. So it's a great tool to use if anybody is doing card sorting. It saves a lot of time and gives you great insight at a glance for the visualization.
And it's so fabulously geeky. I like that idea. So I'm working on a free 30-day trial from TalkFusion, and it has video chat, video newsletters, live meetings, and the thing I liked about the 30-day trial is you don't have to sign up with a credit card, and you can use their software to send out and track the content of the video chat, the video newsletters, sign-up forms. Lots of good data comes from using TalkFusion, so take a look at that if you're doing anything with video and you want to get your video out there in a bigger way and be able to track the results of what your opens are and so on. This is a very good way to do it. Last week you were talking about video selfies, right? About selfies for credit cards, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
there's a mobile bank in the UK that's using biometrics to verify customer identities. Bank's called Atom, and it's actually a digital bank that's optimized for mobile. And so to give people a new way to bank, you log in with your face and voice metrics, and it moves away from the idea that, you know, secure management is done in any other way, but really getting personal with you. So it registers your identity credentials and it creates a face ID, a voice ID, and a passcode, and then you can use those to log in, and it registers a biometric reference to your face and voice, and it stores them as a series of numbers, and then whenever you log in, it compares the latest algorithm to the stored version before it lets you in. And the biometric profile can be required for extra security checks that take the place when there are unusual or high volume transactions. And so that sounds to me like a real giant leap in terms of security.
Yeah, I think we're going to see biometrics. I mean, I think biometrics really is the future of passwords, as it were. I mean, passwords are a disaster, and we've got to find a replacement for it. And it makes biometrics make a lot of sense.
But my God, how long we've been talking about biometrics? How long we've been?
Well, I mean, it's kind of the technology.
ID, you know,
it takes a while for them to get the technology to work, but then all of a sudden it turns and it starts working. It was like that for voice recognition, right? It took forever for it to get any good, and then like overnight, it was like they solved it and it worked.
Well, to a degree. I mean, it still makes bizarre mistakes, but I love the next one. The next one's great.
Yeah, so I caveat, I haven't tried it yet. I've downloaded this, but I haven't actually tried it, but it's so fascinating I had to put it in here. It's called uPitch. U as the letter U, pitch. And this is basically Tinder for journalists and PR folks. So PR pros, it's an app. PR pros can have 400 characters and up to 5 images to catch a journalist's eye for their pitch. If reporters like what they see or read, they swipe right, as in Tinder, and that would bring up a message featuring a message feature that connects them directly to the PR pro. Journalists have the ability to filter the types of messages they see, and PR pros can only contact them if the journalist has swiped right on the pitch. The caveat here, I haven't tried it, but for it to work, it's going to require mass adoption by journalists to be effective. It's available now in the App Store, in the Apple App Store. It'll become available for Android devices in July and Windows devices later this fall. But I'm eager to try it out.
Well, they're going to have to pump up the marketing on that one for sure. But you know, it sounds like something that has the possibility of being useful.
Yeah, well, like Help a Reporter Out was a really good tool. I'm hoping this will be as equally effective. But I need a pitch first. I don't have anything to pitch right now.
Well, we'll get you something to pitch. We could pitch our podcast on in the Google Play. So that brings us to, we're running late. That brings us to the daily numbers. That's you. Uh-oh, Dave's gone. What happened to Dave? Here he is. Okay, Dave is back.
Sorry. Okay, so I have to explain my absence. When I have 2 screens open, and when I'm reading one screen, I hit the what I think is the back button on my Windows keyboard. But I'm recording this podcast on my Mac, and where that button is on my Mac, it's the delete button,
Uh-oh.
and it always kicks me off the podcast. So that's what happened.
Luckily,
I apologize.
something like 7 minutes to. Well, I started it, so it would be me with. You can always come back in with the link, but yeah, I was talking to myself for a second there. Okay, that brings us to your daily numbers.
Okay, so this week we have demographics of gamers. This is from Pew Internet and American Life Research. And this is the percentage of U.S. adults who play video games on a computer, TV, game console, or portable device like a cell phone. All adults, 49% of Americans have played video games. 10% of them, though, refer to themselves or describe themselves as gamers. So not everyone considers themselves a gamer. That's probably too geeky for most people. Men, 50%, women, 48%, 18 to 29-year-olds, 67% played video games, 30 to 49-year-olds, 58% have played video games, 50 to 64%, or 50 to 64-year-olds, 40% have played video games, and 65 plus, only a quarter have played video games. It's pretty even across ethnicities. So white people, 48% played video games, blacks, 53%, Hispanics, 51%, less than high school, 40%, compared to some college, 55%, less than $30,000 in household income, 46%, 75 plus, 52%. So there's a lot of gamers out there, though nobody wants to refer themselves as a gamer.
Well, they may not know the term, but if you come on the subway or the bus in New York City, every single person has their head in their phone, and if you look at what they're doing, 9 out of 10 of them are playing a game. And
I want to see that. Yeah, I see that on the bus all the time. I want to see the crosstabs for this to see what kind of games. So the stats for the for mobile games versus console games versus handheld games and so forth, because those would be more revealing, I think.
Well, I mean, I don't take my phone out public transportation, and we have Wi-Fi now in the subway, and I still can't figure out why anybody would use it. But anyway, that brings us to the end of episode 139 of the Beyond Social Media Show, and all the links for today's show with references to all of the stories that we covered will be at beyondsocialmediashow.com/139, and we hope you'll leave us a review there, and that would be beyondsocialmediashow.com/love. David Erickson is at DErickson on Twitter. He blogs at eStrategyBlog.com and CreativePR.com/blog, both of which you really ought to subscribe to because they're quite terrific. I'm BL Ochman. I'm at What's Next on Twitter. I blog at What's Next blog and Paw Fun blog, and I am CEO of Maximum-Plus.com, where you can hire me for all things video and live streaming. The show is BeyondSocialMediaShow.com, and that's where you'll find all of the videos of all 139 of our shows. They're time-stamped, which means you can jump to any segment that you're interested in by clicking on the time in the video description. And you will find us on Twitter at BS Media Show. We have a newsletter, the BeyondSocialMediaShow.com newsletter, and it has exclusive content, and you will be the only person who will be able to get the big book of shiny objects, which is the best of the shiny objects we've covered on the show and tested and tried and recommend to you. So until next week, same time, same station, when we'll be back with episode 140 of the Beyond Social Media Show. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching.